Good morning. Perfect. Can everyone hear me? I feel quiet. Good morning. As many of you know, we do appointments and reappointments by the governor's office, and we have two reappointments this morning. So we have two board members that will be taking an oath. I have Dr. Rogers, who will go first. Will you please stand with me? Please raise your right hand. I, Shakanda Rogers, do solemnly swear
I, Shakanda Rogers, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well faithfully
discharge the duties upon
discharge the duties upon
which I am about to enter.
which I am about to enter.
Dr. Kasuga, please. I, Cheryl Kasuga,
Cheryl Kasuga,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the
That I-
Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which
the duties upon which
I am about to enter.
I'm about to enter. Man, that's a
I know, congratulations.
This working memory test.
Good morning. Thank you, and welcome to everyone, and congratulations to Dr. Kasuga and Dr. Rogers for their reappointments by the governor. It is, I don't even know what time it is, 8:09. Thank you. And I would like to call this two-day Board of Psychology meeting to order and ask that Ms. Pruteau please call the roll.
Yeah, okay, good. Kasuga.
Here.
Cervantes. Fu. Harp Sheets.
Here.
Nystrom. Phillips.
Here.
Riscate.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Roll is complete and a quorum established.
Thank you. My name is Leah Tate, and I'm the president of the California Board of Psychology. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone here today. Just a few items before we get into the meat. Housekeeping, there are restrooms across the hall out the door. And you will notice, usually I say you will notice, but there's a wall here. All of the board members are on computers. All of our agenda materials are on the computers, so we are usually scrolling. So I just want to alert everyone that we are not on Facebook or texting or Xing, I don't know. I will be looking at the time closely this morning. We do have a petition hearing starting at 8:30, so I typically like to give the judge a few minutes to set up. So we'll stop our procedure at 8:25 or so to give time for the petition hearing to start promptly around 8:30. Continuing professional development credit will be available for attendance at this meeting. And I'm going to give Ms. McCochran a few moments to explain how to make that happen. Ms. McCochran.
Hello? Can you hear me? Is this on?
Okay.
Get closer a little bit.
Okay, so attending today's board meeting provides you with CPD credit under category number 1, attendance at a California Board of Psychology meeting. For your CPD records, please notate today's date as February 29th, 2024, and note that we are here for the board meeting. At the end of the meeting, I will announce how many hours you can be credited. To receive meeting attendance credit, physical presence at the meeting in person today is required. For 2024, board meetings will be held in person. Physical attendance will be required for credit. Committee meetings will be held via WebEx. I will be available today during breaks to answer any questions you may have relating to CPD. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will be diving right in to Dr. Rogers' mindfulness exercise. Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Tate, and good morning to fellow board members, staff, and attendees today. It is wonderful to be with all of you today, and I'm always so thankful and grateful for the opportunity to share something I'm really passionate about, which is mindfulness. So, since we have a very short time before we get into our petition hearings, I will make this an abbreviated mindfulness practice today. Okay, so if people are ready to begin the practice, I invite you to find a position that is comfortable for you. Gently lowering your gaze or closing the eyes if that feels available, whatever is most supportive for you in this moment. I know we have a much earlier start time than we normally do. We have a full agenda ahead. But before we get into the matters of business today, let's just arrive into this moment, into this room. Showing up in our bodies. Wherever our feet are planted, so should our minds and hearts be. And letting your attention focus on the breath. Noticing the inhale and the exhale. Paying attention to the ways in which the chest expands on the inhale and then falls away on the exhale. Connecting with the breath is our portal to the present moment. And it's an invitation to investigate what's alive for us in this moment. We may be a little frazzled, tired. We might be settled. We may have some anticipation of what lies ahead. Whatever's present, it all belongs. And we welcome it. Maybe sensing into any areas of the body where there's tension or holding. And just allowing the body to soften and settle in those areas. noticing the points of contact where your feet are on the floor, your body is connected to the chair beneath you. Allowing yourself to feel supported in this moment. And noticing how it feels to be in a posture of being upright and still. Noticing the movement of the breath as it flows in and out of the body. And offering a bit of gratitude to yourself for taking a moment to slow down, fully arrive, and become present in this present moment. And now we'll begin to bring the practice to a close. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and bring your attention back into the room. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. As always, we love to start with a mindfulness practice. Any board comment on the President's welcome? Any public comment on the President's welcome this morning? Yes, sir? Would you like to come forward? Yes. Is this pertaining to the President's welcome? Or
Say it again.
are your comments pertaining to the President's welcome? This is a public comment for just the President's welcome, so it would be CPD information or the mindfulness practice?
No.
Okay. So you might be up for the public comment period that's next?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on a moment. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment for the President's welcome? Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, this is public comment for items not on the agenda. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Before I invite speakers to come forward for public comment, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss the specifics, including names, as to pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions. This refers to current and pending complaints and possible future complaints. Such discussions are considered ex parte communication, as they could provide information to the members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. While there may be a desire to engage in further discussion with comments at this time, we cannot discuss them or take action. This may give the impression we're not being responsive, but these procedures are critical to ensure the compliance with the Open Meetings Act and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. In addition, if there is a speaker before you who expresses thoughts that are extremely similar to yours, please feel free to verbally agree with previous speakers instead of repeating the exact same words. Can I just get a show of hands who might be making a comment at this time during this public comment period? Perfect. Okay, sir, you have your time.
I'm here to respond to your recent publication for your own peace of mind, and Thank you. And the statement in this brochure is not consistent with California law or with APA Code of Ethics. It says, what psychologists are not supposed to do, they should never engage in multiple relationships, including but not limited to employing patient, socializing with patient, dating patient, friends, co-worker, relative, or significant others. So this statement, as I expressed to the board already a year ago, without any success in getting any response, so I wrote to you and give you a quote from the APA Code of Ethics that multiple relationships that would not reasonably expect to cause impairment or risk of exploitation or harm are not unethical, which is in contrast to what you guys published in that brochure. When I wrote to you a year ago, you dismissed my concern, and you wrote, thank you for contacting BOP, for providing the feedback. When drafting the publication, the board received valuable input from licensing board as well as CPA, and the guide went through legal review. I'm not sure who was on this legal review because and you will not make the changes that I proposed. So you are clearly in violation of the standard of care as defined by APA Code of Ethics. And dismissing me doesn't make much sense. APA published my book on the topic. I've been presenting to CPA. I'm a fellow of Division 42. I have 25 years of lecturing on dual relationships. So dismissing it really is odd for me. So dual relationship, you have 3.5 miles from here, you have a jail. And the jail, all the therapists in the jail, all the psychologists in the jail have dual relationship because they have loyalty to the warden and the loyalty to the patient. That's a dual relationship. So when you say here dual relationship is unethical, you are completely on the wrong. Similarly, there's 130,000 military people in California. All the therapists who treat them have dual relationship because they have loyalty to the high command and they have loyalty to the patient in front of them. So to say all dual relationship are unethical, again, doesn't make any sense. I come from a small town of Sebastopol, or before that in Sonoma. People chose me because they knew me. That means dual relationship in small towns is unavoidable and reasonable. So, but then you decide here that it's illegal what I'm doing when I see people in my community, which is really doesn't make sense and it's not within the standard of care. Small town police psychology, they don't have a choice about dual relationships. They have loyalty to the client, they have loyalty to the police. Sports psychologists travel with their units, with a team, and have a drink at the end of the day, social. This is how they get the sense of trust by the sport team. So I'm requesting that you change the text. It will take you probably a total of 15 seconds to change the text that you can say most dual relationship or unethical dual relationship, but you need to change this one. And refusing to do that the way you told me you're not going to do the change is unethical and illegal, really. So you are refusing to change means deliberately spreading misinformation to the public.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment during this period? Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your comments. Moving on to agenda item number 4. This is discussion and possible approval of the board meeting minutes from November 2nd and 3rd, 2023. Board comment, a motion perhaps.
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
I second.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Any public comment regarding the discussion and possible approval of the board meeting minutes from November 2023? If so, please come forward and have a seat. Thanks. Okay. Any other board comment? Ms. Pruteau, can you please call the roll?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Harp Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom. Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Thank you. And motion passes. At this time, we're going to take that break and let our judge set up. That should take between 5 and 10 minutes. So thank you very much. We will begin our petition hearing shortly. We are back, and we're about to start our first petition hearing, and I am turning this meeting over to the judge. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Madam Court Reporter, when you're ready, if we could go ahead and go on the record. I'm sorry, this will be Dr. Elizabeth R. Lewis. Okay, so we're on the record before the California Board of Psychology, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for reinstatement by Elizabeth R. Lewis, PhD, agency case number 600-5022-000598, and it's OAH number 2024-010178. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter. To establish a quorum of the board, for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Dr. Tate,
Here.
Dr. Rogers,
Here.
Dr. Kasuga,
Here.
Dr. Cervantes, Mr. Fu, Dr. Harb Sheets,
Here.
Ms. Nystrom, and Dr. Phillips,
Here.
and Ms. Riscate.
Here.
All right, let the record reflect that a quorum of the board is present, and if I may take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General, please.
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Matthew Fleming, Deputy Attorney General, representing the people of the state of California.
Good morning. And Ms. Goodman, if I could take your appearance and your client's appearance, please.
Yes, good morning. Good to see you again,
Morning.
Your Honor. Karen Goodman on behalf of Dr. Elizabeth Lewis.
Great.
She's here.
And let the record reflect that the doctor is also here. Good morning. Ms. Goodman, just before we get started, I noticed there's a request to seal records.
Yes.
And I have exhibit 6, 8, 10, 11, and 12. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in the binder, I have 1 through 11. Did you have separate exhibits?
Yes, so I had, and they came, and I apologize, they came in late to me, so we got them over to the board as well as Mr. Fleming. I have exhibits 12 through 15, and I was asked to bring 11 copies, and I have those as well. I've given those to Mr. Fleming as well.
Okay, great. So have they been distributed?
No, I was asked to wait until
Oh, okay.
I address that with you.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and have those distributed at this at this time? Thank you. I guess while we're doing that, Mr. Fleming, is there any objection to the request to seal those exhibits?
There's not, no,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
so the request is granted, and I will go ahead and seal the records. And again, that's exhibits 6, 8, 10, 11, and 12.
Your Honor, I'm having trouble hearing everyone.
Okay.
Me too? Because that'd be a first, so if there is, I'll
Is this any better? Okay, perfect.
These are not separately marked, so I mean, should I handwrite mark each one of them?
That probably would be
I
easiest.
didn't notice it until now, so it's just a housekeeping thing, because I want to give I want to give the floor to each one of them.
Okay.
So,
And actually, while Ms. Goodman's doing that, I'll go over the procedurals for the hearing. I know Ms. Goodman is as well versed, so this is all. We also have some petitioners today who are representing themselves. So this is mainly directed to you. And so the procedure will be, in each case, we'll start the way I started. We'll go on the record, call the case, I'll establish a quorum, take the parties' appearances. And then when we get into the substance of the hearing, the Deputy Attorney General will give a summary of the history of the case, of the discipline of the license, and introduce the petition and any documents he or she has. And then it will be the petitioner's opportunity to present his or her case. The key thing we'd like the petitioners to keep in mind is that we're not here to rehash the prior discipline. The prior discipline has been established. You may hear the Deputy Attorney General talk about the prior discipline just in summary form, and that's just to provide context. So the board's main focus and what we're most interested in today is hearing about rehabilitation that has occurred since the discipline. So that's the main key that I wanted to remind people of. And so the petitioner will have a chance to provide testimony, and then after that, the Deputy Attorney General can ask questions, and then the board also has the opportunity to ask questions, and it's kind of that process until everybody's asked all their questions or given their testimony. At the conclusion of the hearing, I believe we have one more after the first one, and then we go into closed session. So there won't be a decision. A decision will be made today in closed session, but it won't be issued to the petitioner because we'll have to deliberate and then have it drafted. And so there won't be a decision today. We do have a court reporter today, and if I forget to remind anyone, on your way out, if you would stop by the court reporter, she'll have a court reporter form for you, and that's just in case you want a copy of today's transcript that has the information you need for going about ordering a copy. And of course, if you have any questions during the hearing, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm happy to answer any questions. I understand it could be a little, you might be nervous. We all understand that. So just take your time, and we'll try to make this as easy as possible for you.
one for you too as well.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Great, thank you.
very much, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Fleming, I have your binder. Did you want to go over the documents first or provide your summary? Whatever you prefer.
Let's go through the documents, and then I'll do a summary of the
Very good.
case. Exhibit number 1 are the notices of hearing that were provided and served to Dr. Lewis. There's several because there was a change in rooms for the meeting. Exhibit 2 is a certificate of her licensure. Number 3 is a decision and order of revocation that was issued as a result of her default, and it also contains the accusation that was filed against her as a result of her failure to comply with an order compelling a psychiatric evaluation, which is Exhibit 4. Number 5 is the petition for the order and a declaration in support thereof. 6 is Dr. Lewis's petition for reinstatement of her license and her accompanying attachments that were provided along with that petition. 7 is a request from the board for additional information relating to her petition for reinstatement, and 8 is her response thereto. 9 is a second request from the board for additional information. 10 is a response thereto. And number 11 are some documents pertaining to one of Dr. Lewis's arrests in 2015.
Okay, great, thank you. So those exhibits will be marked as indicated. Ms. Goodman, any objection to exhibits 1 through 11?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so those will be admitted for all purposes. All right, your summary, Mr. Fleming, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we're here on Dr. Lewis's petition to have her license reinstated after revocation. Dr. Lewis's license was revoked in 2016 following her failure to comply with a compelled order to submit to a psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Lewis initially came under scrutiny of the board in 2014 following an arrest in which documents indicated she'd been driving a stolen vehicle while in possession of methamphetamine. That triggered a well-founded concern about her use of controlled substances, her ability to safely practice psychology in the state of California, and resulted in a order to submit to the psychiatric evaluation. She did not respond to or comply with that order. As a result, an accusation was filed. Dr. Lewis did not participate in the disciplinary proceedings, and an order revoking her license was issued in her absence.
All right, thank you. Ms. Goodman, shall we go over your exhibit first?
Yes, Your Honor, if we can. So
Okay.
as Exhibit 12 is Dr. Alterman's letter. It's a subsequent letter, and that is, let me just make sure I flip this. Dated February 18th, 2024. Exhibit 13 is Dr. Chagnon's letter of February 14th, 2024. Exhibit 14 is Dr. Winkle's supplemental psychological report dated February 26, 2024. And Exhibit 15 is a certificate of a course that Dr. Lewis completed on February 25th, 2024.
Right, those documents will be so marked. Mr. Fleming, any objections to exhibits 12 through 15?
No, Your Honor.
And those will be admitted for all purposes as well. And for the record, Alterman is spelled A-L-T-E-R-M-A-N.
Correct.
Chagnon is C-H-A-G-N-O-N. And Winkle is W-I-N-K-E-L. All right, thank you, Ms. Goodman. Do you wish to call your client at this time?
Yes, I do.
All right, Dr. Lewis, if I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. If I could have you start by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Yes, my first name is Elizabeth, Elizabeth, and my middle name is Raquel, Raquel, and the last name is Lewis, Lewis.
Thank you. Ms. Goodman, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. So, Dr. Lewis, first of all, can you tell, just briefly, the panel, the board, when you first were licensed?
When I was first licensed?
Yes.
In 2000, in August of 2000.
And when is the last time that you've actually provided treatment to a patient under your license?
It was at the beginning of 2012, I think in January of 2012.
Okay. And did your license that was in effect at that time expire?
Not in 2012, no.
Did it expire at some point after 2000?
I believe it did, in 2014 maybe.
You've heard the Deputy DA, Mr. Fleming, say that there was an order, request for an order for a psychological exam.
Correct.
And at that time, where were you residing?
I was homeless, and I was not receiving any mail or notifications, so I was not aware of the order to come to the Sacramento and get the psych eval. So I wasn't aware of it at all because I was homeless starting in 2014.
So I'm gonna move to the point January 2017. Are you with me on the date?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Totally.
January 19th, 2017. What's the significance of that date?
That was a date I went into rehab from a shelter I'd been living in for 2 years, and I went into a 4 months rehab from January 19th all the way to the beginning of May in Arizona. Should I say more about it, or?
So, and was that, did you at that point receive a diagnosis that you had a substance abuse disorder?
Yes.
And tell the panel, the board, what you did during that 4-month inpatient treatment as related to your rehab.
Yeah, I went to multiple groups on a daily basis. I was in the individual therapy with 2 different therapists. I got a special somatic therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder because it was so severe when I got off the streets. And also, in all these groups, etc., were to help you identify triggers, tools, coping skills to deal with relapse prevention. And the trauma therapy helped alleviate a lot of the trauma symptoms I was experiencing, which were actually a trigger for me to use because I was trying to escape the painful symptoms I'd been experiencing for years. And I kind of got lost.
That's
what was
okay.
the original
So
question?
the next question,
I'm pretty
that's why I'm here. The next question, during the time that you were, and I think it was Granite Mountain in Arizona.
Yes.
During the time that you were in Granite Mountain, did you learn meditation skills?
Well, immediately when I went to Granite Mountain and I wasn't using any drugs anymore, I reverted back to a period of time when I was in my 30s and was clean and sober, and I had a very intensive Buddhist meditation practice for about 7 years. So once the drugs were out of my system, I just wanted to go back to that meditation practice spontaneously. And they had guided meditations and different stuff like that at Granite Mountain, but I basically just started getting up early in the morning so I could have an hour to myself to start meditating, and I basically stuck with that all the way from then until now, where I have a very strong meditation practice in addition to psychotherapy, AA attendance, and step work. And
So let me just stop you so we can
Yeah.
understand the meditation practice. The meditation practice that you resumed, starting in January of 2017, that consists basically of at least an hour every day?
yes, at least.
And is that practice something that you've continued for the past 7+ years?
Yes, I caregive my mother. She wakes up around 8 in the morning. I get up a couple hours before her, and I spend an hour in meditation, and then I spend an hour going to an AA Zoom meeting, all before she wakes up and before I endeavor to take care of my mother, who's pretty highly disabled.
So I'm going to talk to you about your graduation, so to speak, from in May of 2019
Yes.
from Granite Mountain.
Yes.
So by that time, you've been using either drugs or alcohol from January 19th, 2017 until your graduation.
No, I was totally clean and sober, and also I wanted to add that at Granite Mountain, we had to attend AA meetings every day, and we always went in the van, and we were encouraged to get a sponsor, which I got, and started working the steps immediately and worked with a sponsor all the way through to the end of that program.
Good. So let me take you now, upon graduation, you graduated successfully, then did you move to San Francisco and live in a sober living facility?
Yeah, I knew it was the best thing to do was to go to a halfway house situation where I would have all the structure and the tools and the access to AA and program, but have that structured in a clean and sober household where there wouldn't be any risk for relapse or being exposed to other people who are using drugs. It was a safe place to live, a lot of structure, and there was a lot of camaraderie and fellowship there because everybody was in the same boat. And I remained there for a year, and I drove for Uber.
Okay, and during that year that you were in the sober living facility, did you remain sober?
Yes.
Okay. So next question. Did you have psychotherapy during that year?
Yes, I did. I saw this nurse practitioner at Tom Waddell Clinic named Jesse Wennick, and he counseled me, and he also prescribed my medication, but we had a counseling relationship as well. And I saw him that entire year, and I saw him until my mother had a stroke, and I had to move back east to help.
So
take
let's
care
talk
of
about
her.
that.
Yeah.
So that's in about 2018?
Yeah.
Okay. And and your mother had a stroke?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you move back to help your mother?
Well, my sister and brother asked me if I would come out and take care of her because they weren't in a position to do so. And I was living at the sober living and had been sober enough of a length of time that they trusted me with that responsibility. So I essentially my sister called and said, my mom had a stroke, and can you come out and help? And I said, yeah, I'll be on the next flight. And so I just flew out that night to Massachusetts. I only had a suitcase because I'd come from the streets and was in the sober living house. So I moved from sober living to living with my mother in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And I lived with her. We were there a year and 8 months, I think. And then we both moved together back to the Bay Area, to Oakland.
Let's talk about your continued progress in terms of rehabilitation while you're in Massachusetts for a year and sounds like 8 months, so
Yeah.
20 months thereabouts.
Yeah.
Did you use during that time period?
No, I did not.
Did you continue your meditation practice?
Yes, I did.
Now, caring for your mother, was that a very involved job at that point?
It was involved because my mother had severe anxiety about her health issues. So I was constantly helping her manage her anxiety, and it went on like every waking hour of the day, she couldn't stop from ruminating. So I was kind of just trying to hold her with her anxiety and provide some level of comfort and cognitive assistance with the way she was thinking. So I kind of brought in some of my psychologist skills with my mother there.
So next question.
Yeah.
We're in Massachusetts. Did you continue to seek therapy in Massachusetts?
Yes, I did. I
And
went
with
to the Breen Center, which was a community therapy location, and I saw a woman named Catherine Horan for almost the whole time I was in Great Barrington.
Okay, good. And
she was a substance abuse counselor.
And let me ask you this question. Did you, during that time, continue to develop coping skills to deal with stress?
Yes, I was in a unique situation where I was actually dealing with stressors with my mother and caregiving for her while in therapy and processing the stress of that in the therapy and bringing that into just managing stress levels at the house. And my meditation practice also really helped with that because I would get up early every morning and meditate prior to that. And I also went to meetings in Great Barrington as
AA
well.
meetings?
Yes.
Okay. And did you also have a brother that met an untimely death during that time?
Yes, in 2018, my younger brother, who was 56 at the time, accidentally overdosed on methadone. He was using it recreationally. Basically, he had terrible emotional pain, much like me, because we come from the same family. And he just took a little too much methadone, and he was taking Seroquel, and the combination of the two can be lethal, and that's what happened to him.
Okay.
And I was very close to him.
So, did you continue to develop as a result of the therapy, and were you still on some medication to help with your moods?
Yes, I had stabilized my medication between being in rehab. There was a psychiatrist on staff, and we went through a few medications. And then it wasn't until I saw Jesse Wenick at the Tom Woodell Clinic where he actually got me on just a regimen that worked for me.
Okay.
And I've been on that same medication regimen now for 6.5, 7 years.
Okay, that's great.
So it hasn't changed at all.
So tell me about, you returned to the Bay Area in what, approximately September of 2019?
Yeah, I think so.
And where did you live at that point?
Well, my mother and I lived in a hotel for a while because we needed to find a place to live. And we've been trying to find a place from Great Barrington, but we couldn't because we couldn't meet with anybody and people didn't want to rent unless we were in person. So we were at a hotel, and then we found a really nice house she liked in Oakland in the Piedmont Avenue area. And so that's where my mother and I live. And I have a half-brother who moved in with us for 1.5 years. And
Okay, so take us to that period of time. How long did you live with your mother in Piedmont before she went to that care facility?
I think it was 19, 20, 21, 22, 3 years.
Okay.
And it was 22 that she went into care because I'd been working with her for 4.5 years, and I needed some time apart because I just was with her like 80 hours a week for 3 years, and then we got some help, and the hours kind of went down, but it was very stressful.
So let me ask you this about your rehabilitation in that
Yeah.
time period. You're back in the Bay Area, you're living in Piedmont. Are you attending AA meetings?
Yes, I'm attending AA meetings at, there's a meeting house right 3 blocks from my house that I walk to. And I went to meditation AA meetings there, and I would sometimes take my mother because they were open meetings, and she would come with me and meditate and enjoyed the meetings as well.
So when you returned back to the Bay Area, approximately in 2019, at some point thereafter, did you start seeing a therapist?
Yes, when I came out to Oakland, I contacted my old therapist, Linda Bartlett, who I'd seen for 14 years in the past, from 1996 to 2010. I contacted her and asked her if she would see me. It was during COVID, so we had phone sessions. But I saw her probably a year and a half. And then I believe what happened was I might have not had the money to pay her, but I also know that I had owed her a significant amount of money from back in 2010, and she wanted me to take care of the bill before we proceeded, and there was nothing like acute or going on in my therapy that would prevent me from just going to the next step, which is within 4 or 5 months, I started therapy with Dan Alterman, who was referred to me by Dr. Winkle, the evaluator, and I was with Dan for a year, and then I moved up to Petaluma, and I tried to get community mental health, but the therapist match wasn't very good, just very young MFT intern, and it just wasn't really working. And I resumed seeing Dan again because I was finally able to get paid by the state for caregiving my mother, so I had a little extra money. So I just started seeing Dan again recently. But I saw Dan for a year prior to that, and he was extremely helpful.
That's good. So let's talk about a few other things. If we're back in the Bay Area, it's now. Did you continue your meditation practice?
Oh yeah. I mean, I meditate every day, like in the morning. I've gotten to the point where I can kind of keep meditative awareness as I'm doing things during the day. I just have this quiet, watchful place that's always there.
Did you at some point volunteer for AA?
Yes, I did.
Tell the panel about that.
That was back in 2021. I volunteered to work the AA hotline, which is for people who are distressed or people who need resources through AA, and they basically forward their phone line to your house, and then I would pick up the calls from there. And they were 4-hour shifts, and I initially started 4-hour shifts once a month, and then started doing them like 3 or 4 times a month. And I was with AA for 2.5 years doing that volunteer work. But my mother in October had a psychosis, a psychotic break, and her dementia got much worse. So I couldn't be on the phone when I was with her. I had to constantly monitor her behavior because she was drinking salad dressing and trying to eat candles, and so I had to watch her all the time. And at that point, I resigned from the AA hotline because I couldn't do it at the same time.
Okay, that's helpful. So let's
Yeah.
kind of bring you to October of 2023 to the current. Are you living with your mother?
Now I am, yes, since August.
Are you the prime caregiver for your mother?
Yes,
And your mother has some severe issues, correct?
very severe.
What have you been doing to deal with the stress that you're experiencing as a caregiver?
Well, I've been doing, the stress that came along with her psychosis and the Lewy body dementia from Parkinson's, I stepped up my game with AA and just started going to more meetings, having more contact with my sponsor, and doing reading, writing gratitude lists every day. Probably spend an hour and a half every day doing AA upkeep, those activities, and that's helped a lot with the stress. I can keep things in perspective if I stay close to the program. And that's how I basically dealt with the stress of dealing with my mother. Also, because I have little more money from the IHSS because I haven't had any money for quite a while. I got assistance from somebody else who's an assistant caregiver who's doing like 20 to 25 hours a week to help me out. So I'm not spending 12 hours straight with my mother every day except on the weekends.
Okay, good. Let me
Yeah.
ask you about a couple other questions on this. Is that how you've gotten to know Dr. Chagnon?
Yes, Dr. Chagnon is my mother's neurologist, and basically her primary care in Napa, where my mother was living, thought she might have Parkinson's, so she referred to Dr. Amy Chagnon in Petaluma, and so we started driving from Napa to Petaluma to meet with Dr. Chagnon. So I've accompanied my mother to every meeting my mother's had with Dr. Chagnon over the past 2 years. And through that process, I worked with Dr. Chagnon on my mother's care because I'm the primary caregiver, and to have everything work smoothly, we had to work together since my mother wasn't fully at the wheel. And so I just work closely with Dr. Chagnon with the medication regimen and timing, and my background and experience in psychology made it easy for me to kind of case formulate on my mother. And it was very pleasurable to work with Dr. Chagnon because she was so on the ball and we had such a easy rapport at this level, which I think greatly enhanced my mother's care.
So at some point, did you have, I think you mentioned Dr. Winkle. Did he provide an independent evaluation of you?
Yes, he did. That was 2 years ago. And I asked him to update it and interview with me because the board had asked for a psychiatric evaluation to be within a year. And when he evaluated me, there were no clinical elevations on PTSD or mental health elevations. I mean, I was stable and on my medication regimen and pretty much asymptomatic. But what's different about now as opposed to in the past, in the last 7 years of work I've done, I've actually been able to reduce my PTSD and anxiety and depressive symptoms to almost like 90% of what they were before. And previously, the main catalyst for drinking and using was the symptoms I had and the emotional pain I was in. So I was in a flywheel of using and trying to stop the pain and trying not to use and then going back to it because I was in had so many symptoms. And I thought I was anxious and depressed. I didn't realize I had severe trauma. I didn't realize it until I started working with Linda Bartlett again and Dr. Alterman. And so from now to then, that has effectively changed my whole life and my pictures. I'm pretty much asymptomatic and I don't have the pain that would make me want to escape and drink and use drugs. And I really don't want to lose feeling normal. I mean, I feel normal now and pretty happy most of the time, and it's very novel, but I've gotten used to it. But I don't crave or desire to use drugs to alter my state when my state is already quite good.
So can I ask you just a few follow-up questions before I turn it over to counsel?
Yeah.
Have you engaged in either alcohol or drug intake at all since January 19th of 2017?
No.
Okay. Why are you asking this board to reinstate your license?
Well, I mean, I love being a psychologist, and it felt like a life's calling, helping people, especially for me in a verbal format. And I haven't been satisfied not working. I really miss it a great deal. And at this point, I've accrued so much life experience and suffering and knowledge of substance abuse and alcoholism. I now feel like, and now I've come out the other side of it, I feel like if I can do it and I did it, I can certainly convey that to other people to help them. And I would really like to help people in recovery from addiction and alcoholism.
So that's my last line of questioning. If you get reinstated by this board, what are your plans of what you want to be able to do to be able to use your license to help the public?
Well, I wanted to start with a telehealth job specializing in drug and alcohol rehab, so it's not too stressful. It's not like jumping right into private practice and doing everything all at once, all for yourself, but a platform where they do the billing for you and give you the patients, but with a specialty in drug and alcohol recovery. And then I met a psychologist in AA who was disciplined by the board back in the 90s for drinking. And he has since established a long-term practice treating people with drug and alcohol issues who are in recovery. And we've developed a connection, and he also has volunteered to help me and mentor me in starting a private practice at some point after I do telehealth in drug and alcohol recovery population. And so I would, it just feels very natural to me at this point, now that I've done the healing, to actually sally forth and provide what I've learned to other people so I can help them. And I have something to say to anybody who has a drug or alcohol problem, pretty much about anything at this point.
Good. Thank you, Your Honor. Those are all the questions I have at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Fleming, cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. I have a number of questions, Dr. Lewis, but I wanted to pick up on a couple of things that you spoke about. I think there were 3 treatment centers that you've gone to since 2017 when you became sober again. Is that right?
No. Well, oh, you mean like the Breen Center in Great Barrington?
Yeah, you mentioned.
And Tom Waddell Clinic.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So I've seen records from the Massachusetts treatment center, but I haven't seen records from the others. Is there a reason that you've submitted some records and not others?
No, I had signed releases of information for all of them, and had asked them to send the records. I can't remember what happened with Jesse Wennick, but I know I asked for back records for like Linda Bartlett and for Dan Alterman.
Okay.
And I had asked Jesse Wennick for records, and he wrote a letter. I can supply them.
Well, the reason I ask is you had an evaluation with Dr. Winkle, and he reviewed the records as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand why those weren't submitted with the psychotherapy records you did submit to the board. That's all.
There's really no reason other than it was an oversight, or there was some reason. It's not jogging my memory, but there was certainly no intention to omit any information.
Okay. First time you became clean and sober, you were 23 years old?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, how did you become sober?
Well, I had lived in a very drug-infested environment for, since I was 14 years old. My father was a drug trafficker, and I was given drugs as a teenager. And through mostly the exposure in that environment in Marin County in the 70s, I developed some pretty major cocaine dependence and alcoholism. And a friend of mine who was part of that crowd that I was running with went to AA, and she told me all about it and said it's just amazing. You gotta go, and you could really use this help. So I just went
Okay.
and drove to San Francisco and went to a meeting.
So you first became involved in AA when you were 23 then?
Yeah,
Okay. And do you believe in that philosophy? You follow the 12 steps?
yes.
Can you give us the first 3 or 4 steps of the 12-step program?
Well, yeah, the first step is to admit you're powerless over your addiction and over the alcohol and the drugs and the alcoholic and drug thinking. So an admission of powerlessness that you can no longer control the substance. You have to admit that it's out of your control at this point. You've lost all control of yourself. And then the second step is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So that's where you're shifting the powerlessness over to an existence of some kind of faith that there's something that can help you. And then step 3 is turn your will and your life over to the care of God or whatever entity or universal concept you have of a higher power. And then you start doing the footwork by writing up a personal inventory of your resentments and identify your part in these interactions you've had with people that you're still carrying around.
I think you aced those 4.
Yeah.
Good. Again, though, this was information that you came by when you were 23 years old, correct? When you first got sober?
Yeah,
Okay. You maintained that sobriety for a period of 13 years.
correct.
And during that time, you had a number of different jobs.
Yeah, I was a paralegal for a while. And I also was finishing school at City College, and I transferred to UC Berkeley during that time. And then I applied to graduate school after I worked in law firms for about 4 years. And I got into a psychology graduate program called the Wright Institute at UC Berkeley, or in the Berkeley area, campus area.
And that was in 1998, you got your PhD?
Yes,
And your psychology license shortly thereafter in 2000, right?
yes.
And 2000 was the same year that began using methamphetamine.
Well, that was when I started using methamphetamine, but prior to that, in 1997, I went through a terrible breakup and was very traumatized, and I started drinking, and I was drinking socially, mostly with people in my graduate program. But then I had a betrayal where my best friend got involved with my partner behind my back, and I just took it very hard, and I met this guy.
So is the betrayal, is that the reason you started using and drinking again?
The breakup was the main trigger in 1997 of a relationship, but then things got much worse when I was drinking and I got involved with somebody, and there was a betrayal, like a triangle, where my best friend was sleeping with my partner, and I was devastated, and I was super depressed and very symptomatic, and somebody told me they used meth. It was a guy at a video store who worked there, and I just asked her one day, can I try it? And that was all she wrote, because I was addicted the moment I did it.
Okay. And again, this is when you were practicing as a psychologist?
Yes.
Okay. You were working in prisons at the time?
Yeah, and I was keeping my use to in between prison jobs, because I would work for like 6 months or 3 months at a prison, and then move to another prison because I was a contractor. So when that assignment ended, or if I wanted to move, I could just move around the system.
And so you were, for lack of a better term, just kind of shutting off your addiction during the periods you were working?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a prison I couldn't possibly use while I was in prisons. And, I mean,
Okay.
they search you, there's dogs, and also I just had I told myself I wouldn't use on the days that I saw patients, and so I didn't.
Dr. Lewis, I think you mentioned in your petition you're also addicted to Norco during this time period?
Well, I was addicted to Norco and then OxyContin, but I wasn't addicted to Norco for 15 years. That was probably like a year.
So I have to ask you if, is this concept of turning off your addiction, would you consider that to be minimization?
Well, I'm sure I was minimizing at the time.
If you were treating a patient, if you got your psychology license back and they told you that they're only using in between assignments, but they're addicted to methamphetamine and Norco, would you consider that they might be minimizing?
Yeah, minimization of a problem.
Right. And is minimization consistent with recovery?
No.
Okay. When you first started drinking again, did you contact your AA sponsor? I'm referring again to 97.
97. Well, I didn't hide it, and I didn't, I mean, that was a while ago, and I don't remember whether I had a sponsor at that time or not, but I drifted from the program into this relationship and ended out.
Okay. But safe to say, you probably didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. And as that progressed, as you started using other substances, you didn't seek treatment or reach out to a sponsor?
Well, there were various times I tried to seek treatment and reach out, but I couldn't stop.
Okay. You understand that your license came under scrutiny because of criminal activity, right?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
And you're arrested in a stolen car
Yeah.
while in possession of methamphetamine.
Well, it was not. It was reduced from stolen car to joyriding because I had the keys.
Okay.
But it was kind of an out of control situation.
Yeah, and there was a series of 4 or 5 arrests that same time period.
Yeah.
In 2000.
Yeah, because I was homeless and I was shoplifting and engaging in petty theft to support my drug habit and my caffeine and my cigarettes. So.
And alcohol.
I wasn't drinking so much when I was on the street. It was only later on when I was on the streets that I started drinking to take the edge off of the methamphetamine.
You recall being arrested at Trader Joe's?
Yeah, I was arrested at Trader Joe's, but I stole liquor because I had a fence who worked at a market who took my liquor and paid me cash. So I wasn't stealing it for my own consumption.
What would you do with the cash?
I would buy methamphetamine
Okay.
or
Your psychotherapy records you did submit indicated you have a history of substance abuse regarding heroin.
very minor.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never been a big heroin person. It was only towards the end of my use in 2016 that I started using heroin because the methamphetamine was causing me to feel too anxious and paranoid because at the time I was experiencing death threats from a biker gang and being brutally harassed by them. And I was just so, I feared for my life. And so I started doing heroin to take away that fear that I had.
Okay.
And that was right before I went to rehab.
All right. And cocaine?
Some crack use in, it might have been in that period of 1998. It's hard to keep it straight because the memories are blurry, but suffice it to say, the reasons why I was using this and my use was escalating was because I had unremitted treatment-resistant PTSD, anxiety, and depression.
So you're currently working full-time as a caregiver for your mother?
Yes,
And you also do an hour of meditation every day?
at least.
And you're attending AA
Yeah,
every day?
almost every day. I'd
Okay.
say probably 5 days a week.
And your mother is pretty severely disabled at this point?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. How do you intend to fit a psychology practice into your admittedly very busy schedule you have going on?
Well, my mother's kind of at the point where we need to think about putting her in nursing care. I mean, she's just, I think that's probably a next issue that's going to arise in the next 7 or 8 months. And I figure if I start telehealth, I can modulate my hours and accommodate my mother and also do telehealth practice. And also, as I earn more money and have money, I have a caregiver who lives at the house who's helping me.
Currently?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned as part of your petition that you are or believe yourself to be on a global terrorism watch list. I'm just hoping you can explain a little more about that.
Yeah, I applied to drive for DoorDash, and they sent me an adverse action letter, and they sent me a copy of the background check that they had processed, and it said I was considered status as on the global terrorist watch list. And then for reason being why it was, it said because I could no longer take Medi-Cal patients. And I researched it on the internet, and it said on the internet if you get in trouble with the licensing board or discipline, it said they automatically put you on this list. So I'd assumed it had something to do with the revocation of the license.
Okay, and it's your assumption that if your license is reinstated, then you won't be on?
Well, it shouldn't be. I mean, I would hope, or maybe I'll have to apply to Medi-Cal so I can get back. It's just very hard to trace back these kind of, I don't know what you call it, just being randomly put on a global terrorist watch list for no real reason other than losing a license.
Okay.
I mean, I would love it if anybody knew more about it.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Goodman, anything on redirect?
Just a few follow-up questions.
Sure.
Counsel asked you about the treatment records from the Tom Waddell Urban Health, as well as the treatment records from Granite Mountain. And you didn't have those in terms of the packet, but did you supply this board with a letter from Jesse Wennick?
Yes.
And that's at, it's Exhibit 6.
Yeah, and I
AG
also
just a sec,
oh,
AG
sorry.
One at a
Okay.
time. Exhibit 6, AG 87, and that's Jesse Wennick's letter of July 30th, 2021?
Mhm.
Yes? And then also Greg Struve, who was the owner of Granite Mountain, and that was a June 23rd, 2021 letter, and that's at Exhibit 6 at 89, correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so, and those, and you've read those observations and opinions by both Dr. Struve, Mr. Struve and Dr. Winnick, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and they're accurate to your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the other question that I heard Mr. Fleming kind of asked, but let me just ask it directly. You've struggled with sobriety before.
Yes.
How can you tell this panel, this board, given your progress in terms of rehabilitation and your development of coping skills, that at least in your belief, that it's unlikely that you'll relapse again?
Well, I basically ended out on the street. I lost everything, and I went to death's door by becoming homeless and living on the streets and having my life threatened and being assaulted and emotionally abused quite a bit. I mean, it was a terrifying experience being on the street. I was drug addicted. It couldn't have been worse, short of dying, which I almost did. And that happened at the age of 53 to 56, which is late in life to have that happen. But I saw the rock bottom and saw that the only way that I can possibly avoid dying and going back to the street, which I'm sure would happen, I need to not use drugs or alcohol to open myself up to going back to the streets again, because it just feels to me like it's a one-way track to going back to the streets and probably end out getting murdered or dying or illness and health issues. But I got in a lot of trouble on the streets with the gangs, and that was no joke, and that's what got me off the streets, was I knew I was going to be murdered if I didn't get out of that environment. So that's why I left and went into rehab, because I knew it was the end of the line for me. And in this last 7 years that I've been in AA, I've really listened to AA in a different way. It's my understanding is more nuanced and deeper than it ever was, because I understood that my memories of how bad it was were crucial to keep those alive, so that I don't use and I don't forget what happened. And one of the problems with alcoholics and addicts, if they don't keep the memories alive of what it was like, the addict alcoholic mind minimizes the bad memories and starts to romanticize the drug over time. And the further you get away from the program, and the further you get away from remembering what it was like, the more likely you are to relapse or use. And I have every intention of sticking close to the AA program, and I have for 7 years now, and I use it fully. And I don't have the PTSD or anxiety or depressive symptoms that I had my whole life. Only in the last 7 years has that diminished to probably 90% of it is gone. I mean, I deal with the little feelings of stress and some anxiety with my mother, but I feel like I fully have a plan and activity in place that militate against any anxiety or stress breaking through and creating the chaos that would make me want to use. I feel like I feel myself very differently than I was before in the past. I was very distracted, in a lot of pain, and just like all over the place, and not really dealing with my PTSD, going from relationship to relationship, job to job. I just didn't have the awareness that I do now about the nature of my PTSD. And I had an exceptionally brutal childhood with a father who gave me drugs starting at age 7. And that's what I grew up in and with. And so I've always been trying to get away from that my whole life, by going to Berkeley and going into graduate school and having marked periods of sobriety. But the missing link was the fact that my symptoms were so severe. I had to escape. It was too painful to be an ordinary consciousness for me. And now that that's not there, I don't have the motivation to use.
Thank you, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fleming, anything further on recross?
No recross.
All right, any questions from the board members? Go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Lewis. Did you take any continuing education regarding providing psychological services via telehealth?
What was the last part?
Did you take any continuing education courses regarding providing psychological services via telehealth?
Oh, telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a telehealth section to law and ethics course I just did for California, but I had bookmarked in my mind that I would be taking the telehealth prior, like probably now, between now and then, and whatever the outcome is of this hearing.
And also, I have one more question. So you've been out of the field for a while, and what do you think you need to do to re-enter the practice of psychology competently?
Well, I think it would probably be good for me to consult with like Dan Alterman or another psychologist on my cases. I also plan on introducing it slowly through telehealth, where you have control over how many clients you take on, and I would probably hire a supervisor to help me in the beginning, so I can ease back in, because I feel like together and on top of it, but to get the ropes back, I would tell myself I should see a supervisor with the cases I have, at least for a few months, if not longer, and see how it goes. And I would assume the board also has recommendations in that area.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Lewis. I just have a few questions. You mentioned going to Dr. Alterman for consultation.
Well, I've often, when I was in therapy with Linda Bartlett, I would run some stuff by her about patients or countertransference, and it was kind of part of the therapy, and also it was very helpful in informing treatment, but it doesn't substitute for a supervisor.
So would it be appropriate to hire Dr. Alterman as purely a consultant for your cases?
Well, I think if I don't use Dan Alterman for my individual therapy, I would love to have him as a supervisor.
What would be the problem ethically?
Ethically, well, the dual relationship, and that if he served me in the capacity of as a client, then there could be some compromise in supervision, which is also a dual or power differential relationship. I can imagine the boundaries might get a little messy.
What medications are you taking at present?
What am I taking? I take trazodone for sleep. I take duloxetine or Zymbalta for depression. I take doxepin for sleep. And then I take a low dose of risperidone for anxiety and agitation.
Okay, in Dr. Winkle's report, he made reference to you no longer experiencing paranoid symptoms, hallucinations, or delusions. Had you previously experienced paranoid symptoms, hallucinations, and delusions?
Well, back when I was using, I did, but not while I've been sober or off the streets.
So you're telling me that since January of 2017, you've not experienced paranoia, hallucinations, or delusions?
No.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any further questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, Dr. Lewis, and thank you for being here with us. You mentioned that you attend AA meetings approximately 5 times a week, and then in one of the letters that we received today, it was from Dr. Alterman, which was dated February 18th, so this month, that he said that at this point in time, you've just been attending meetings occasionally, and he didn't think you needed them regularly at present. So I wondered if you could clarify for us what your actual attendance is at AA meetings.
Well, my attendance, I go to probably 4 Zoom meetings a week, first thing in the morning when I wake up, and I go to 1 or 2 in-person meetings. So I'm actually doing more than Dr. Alterman says, and doing homework for AA and calling other AA members for a network of AA support. And I don't necessarily agree with Dr. Alterman that I could do a lot less AA. I feel like as long as there's stress factors, I think it's a really good idea for me to stick close to AA, and I have a sponsor. I'm in touch with her multiple times a week, and it's been super helpful during this period that my mother has had psychosis and dementia.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what Dr. Phillips was asking about with the risperidone, and you were saying you're taking it for anxiety and what else?
Agitation.
Agitation.
It was originally prescribed for anxiety, but it just has the effect of, it has a calming effect at the low dose. I take 1 to 2 milligrams a night, and there's just a calming effect that is therapeutic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just wondered, and you might not know the answer, I would understand, if there was any reason your physician chose risperidone over perhaps some other anti-anxiety medication.
Oh, well, I can't take anxiolytics because of my status.
Yeah, the addictive potential, I
exactly.
understand.
And the risperidone for me works like a charm, and there wasn't any other reason to switch me to something else because it works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions from the board?
Hi, Dr. Lewis. I just had one question about, so with all, the AA meetings and the facilities that you've gone into, were you ever instructed or made to go to these, or has it always been on your own that you've just kind of?
The only time it's ever been mandated was when I was in rehab and I had to go. And then when I was in sober living, we were expected to go like 2 or 3 times a week. So at those times, I did comply with the expectation. But ever since then, it's only been up to me. And so I choose to be active.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And actually, I did have one other question, just for clarification. So, you were caregiver to your mom 2018, 2022. I heard you mention that she may, to balance re-entering the profession, that she may be ready for a senior living facility, but then, I have documented here, it says that this was March 2023, that she was now in a senior living facility, so she was in a facility and then taken out.
Yeah, she was in an adult assisted living for a year, which was basically she just had her own apartment and lived on her own. And I needed some separation, time to regroup, and we found a decent place for her to just live in Napa. And then she ran out of money, couldn't pay them anymore, and I was out of money. So we decided to combine our households again and the caregiving so that she would have continuity of care, but we were handling our budgets appropriately too.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Lewis. Thank you for being here. I just have one question. Could you speak, I'm sorry. Could you speak a little bit about your concept of rehabilitation and how you would help facilitate that for other clients?
Well, I think rehabilitation, I would say, is not a truncated event. Rehabilitation is a process, and I think phases of rehabilitation go as you go along in recovery. But I mean, it's kind of like recovery is an ongoing process. By linking yourself to AA or to a network of support people, to the literature, etc., as a way to remain in a rehabilitative state. I mean, I think you're always rehabilitating when you've had a drug or alcohol problem like mine. But I think it's important to let people know that it's a lifelong process, that you have to stay connected to something that's going to help your sobriety. And not everybody does AA, but they can find other groups or other ways to basically keep the memories fresh and continue to work on themselves so that they have a meaningful, less suffering life that makes people want to live and engage through the future. But I kind of lost track of the question.
Well, you were talking about how it is an ongoing process. How would you help clients that come to your office or that you see via telehealth who are also struggling with addiction?
Well, I would, of course, do a full interview of what their actual history is and their profile of drug use and whatever is salient to them, gather information. And based on the information they give me, I would ask questions and have them elaborate on different elements of it that stuck out. And then I would discuss a course of action and what they could do to shore up the areas of difficulty they're having. And I think just helping people with coping skills and support networks is super important. Also identifying triggers to using and help people with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, any further questions from the board? All right, seeing none. Closing arguments, Mr. Fleming?
Thank you, Gunnar. Admittedly, I think the past 7 years have gone very well for Dr. Lewis, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge that at the outset. Having said that, there's some things that jump out at me in her petition and her responses that give me pause and concern that the risk of relapse is quite a bit higher than she's put forward, and that she is not fully rehabilitated in the sense that we would hope to see, in the sense that she has not fully appreciated the gravity of some of her past actions while she was a practicing psychologist, and is still seeking to avoid or minimize some of that behavior. What jumps out at me is when we talk about her beginning alcohol use and how it's the betrayal of a partner that caused it, as opposed to her own physiological addiction to the substance. Same thing when I asked her about heroin. She began talking about biker gang threats and how that was causing her to use heroin. I don't think that's consistent. Admittedly, I'm no expert on addiction, but I don't think that's consistent with even her own philosophy of Alcoholics Anonymous, which teaches that you are physiologically an addict. You will be an addict for your entire life, and you have to continually work at your recovery in order to maintain it. So I think I was giving her a fair opportunity to try and explain that to the panel and come forward with that sort of line of presentation. Candidly, I was hoping to hear that. I don't think it's realistic that someone is a meth addict only on the weekends and in between work assignments. I just don't think that maps on to the reality of addiction. So that's sort of point I would make in regards to rehabilitation. The other thing I would say is that this panel, in making its determination, does look at the nature and gravity of the behavior that happened at the time that was the cause for discipline. And here, Dr. Lewis was arrested in a stolen vehicle in possession of methamphetamine. That was just one arrest in a series of arrests that took place when her license may have been expired, but it was subject to renewal at any point 3 years from the date of that expiration. So I think that's very troubling. It's troubling for the profession, and deserves adequate consideration by the board. The last thing I would say is Dr. Lewis is a bit of a unique case. She did have a long period of sobriety, 13 years, where she had almost every one of the same tools that she has today in order to avoid relapse, and she was unable to do it. And so we're in a little bit of a fool me twice kind of scenario, where she had a 13-year period of sobriety, began practicing psychology, started using methamphetamine, and then spiraled into homelessness, addiction, and criminal activity. Here we have a 7-year period of sobriety. She's asking for your blessing to resume the practice of psychology. And I'll reiterate, I think that risk of relapse is very real. It's important to consider the public safety in this situation. It's important to consider the protection of the consumers of psychological services in the state. So for all those reasons, I do want to commend Dr. Lewis again on her sobriety, but I have to recommend to the board that her petition be denied at this point in time. Having said that, if the board is willing to be more lenient, the conditions that I would recommend before her license be reinstated is that as condition precedent, she undergo a psychological evaluation from a board-appointed psychologist, not Dr. Winkle. I don't know if she has any personal relations with him. I'm not suggesting as much, but I think the order in 2015 was that she undergo an evaluation from a board-appointed psychologist. That should be what she has to do before she gets her license back. Upon reinstatement of the license, I would ask for 6 years of probation with a monitor, someone who's free of conflict. I'd ask for ongoing therapy, counseling, treatment, and also for biological fluid testing. I think one thing that is missing from her petition as a whole is proof that she has been sober and clean. I've taken her at her word. I don't have any evidence to the contrary, but there are no records of drug testing that she's submitted to actually prove that she's done the hard work to stay clean. So with that, I would submit the decision to the board and happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you. Ms. Goodman, your closing argument?
Thank you very much. This is a redemption song out of Bob Marley's, probably one of his more famous songs. She's come down from the bottom of really the pit, and she's come back the hard way. And it has been a remarkable journey for these last 7 years. certainly her life, and you've read the records, whether it's Dr. Winkle's history that goes through the child trauma and adolescent trauma, all the reasons that caused her to develop a substance abuse disorder, all the reasons that she relapsed. And here's what was missing from all that time, as she so eloquently said just a few minutes ago. She said, I learned to develop, identified the cause of my problem, my post-traumatic stress problems, my anxiety. She got to the core, starting with that inpatient treatment in 2017. And to her credit, she has stuck with that. Meditation, she said she did it before when she wasn't using, but she stuck with it. A habit every day to start her mornings out, to start her days out. A total mindfulness practice that sets her on her day's journey every day. She's been through, in the last 7 years, stresses that would cripple every one of us. Her mother, who she's obviously had a traumatic relationship with, going into, as we all will experience sooner or later, serious, mental decline with the aging process. And she's been the prime caregiver. Remarkable stress. Her younger brother dying early because of an accidental drug overdose. And has she relapsed at those times? Not once. Her commitment to return to the profession and take what she has learned from the darkest bottoms of her journey is what makes her the exact person that should be given this second chance. So with that, I would submit, and thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you, Ms. Goodman, and Mr. Fleming, thank you. Thank you both for your presentations. Dr. Lewis, thank you for being here. With that, the record's closed, the matter's submitted, and we are off the record. Thank you. And Ms. Goodman, just a reminder, if you would stop by the court reporter shortly to pick up the billing form.
So I take this with me?
You can take that with you.
Hello, everyone. Our next petition hearing is scheduled for 10:30, so we're going to take a break until that time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hello, welcome back. This is a petition hearing for the Board of Psychology, and I'm handing it off to the judge. Judge, please take the helm.
All right, thank you. So, Madam Court Reporter, if we could go on the record, this is Morella Bombardini's matter. So we're on the record before the California Board of Psychology, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation by Morella, spelled Morella, Bombardini, spelled Bombardini. It is agency case number 600-2018-000516, and it's OAH number 2024-010186. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Dr. Tate.
Here.
Dr. Rogers.
Here.
Dr. Kasuga.
Here.
Dr. Cervantes. Mr. Fu.
Here.
Dr. Harb Sheets.
Here.
Ms. Nystrom.
Here.
Dr. Phillips.
Here.
Ms. Riscate.
Here.
And let the record reflect that a quorum is present. All right, next, may I take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General, please?
Yeah, good morning again. I'm Deputy Attorney General Matthew Fleming, representing the people of the state of California.
Good morning. And ma'am, are you Dr. Morella Bombardini?
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Bombardini, are you no longer represented by counsel Ms. Jean Baptiste?
No, sir.
Okay. Were you present earlier this morning when I went over the procedural aspect of the hearings?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. So I'll go over that again, just so you're familiar. So after I go over these procedures, Mr. Fleming will introduce the petition and supporting documents and provide a summary of the prior discipline of your license. And then the matter will turn over to you to present your evidence. And what the board is most interested in hearing about is any rehabilitation you have undergone since your license was placed on probation. So the prior discipline that led to your license being placed on probation has already been established, and so we're not here to relitigate that. You will hear Mr. Fleming in his summary provide some background about the prior discipline, but it's just to provide context for why we're here. So if you need to provide similar context in your evidence, that's certainly acceptable, but your main focus should be on any rehabilitation you have undergone. And after you testify, Mr. Fleming will have an opportunity to ask you questions. And then you'll have another chance to testify in kind of that back and forth format. And then the board will have an opportunity to ask you any questions they may have. And do you have any documents you wanted to offer that were not already offered?
I believe I do. There are 3 pieces of documents that have not been seen by the board.
Okay, and do you have enough copies for everyone?
Sorry, I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they're passed out to everybody, including council. We have copies for council.
That's what she doesn't have.
Oh, we can make copies.
We have the ability to make.
I don't know. Oh, sorry. We don't have the ability to make copies. No.
I could go to the board next door and ask if I could use their copier. Is this what you have, a copy?
Okay, so we could, we could have those marked. And then, did you have any witnesses other than yourself to testify?
No, sir.
Okay, so once you finish presenting your evidence, then each side will be able to make a closing argument, and then that will conclude the hearing. The board will deliberate later today in closed session, so you won't receive a decision today. Okay? Do you have any questions about the procedure?
No, sir.
Okay, if you have any questions during the hearing, if any come up, please feel free to ask.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fleming, do you wish to go over your documents or provide your summary first?
Sure, let's do the documents.
Okay.
The first exhibit is notice of hearing served on the petitioner. Number 2 is her certificate of licensure. It's also a certified decision and order suspending Dr. Bombardini's license, placing it on probation, and documents related to that. Number 4 is the petitioner's petition for early termination of probation and attachments that she submitted. 5 is a probation compliance report. 6 is the probation file maintained by the board's probation officer. And 7 are additional submissions from the petitioner that I've received prior to the hearing. Just for the record, I'm introducing these on behalf of Dr. Bombardini. There are a number of submissions I noticed that relate to events prior to her being placed on probation that I don't think are relevant for purposes of today's hearing. Those include events going to her conviction, offers of employment that I again, would just note for the record, I'm not sure they're relevant for the board's consideration.
All right, thank you. Those exhibits will be marked 1 through 7. Dr. Bombardini, any objection to exhibits 1 through 7 being admitted for all purposes?
I have a question with regards to what it is relevant and not relevant. Was that the last letters that I submitted with regards to not being able to gain employment due to my license being on probation?
Well, Dr. Bombardini, as you heard the judge, the purposes of today's hearing are to discuss your rehabilitation. And so I noticed a number of these documents actually predate even your discipline. on your license. And so what I'm explaining is I don't think those are relevant for purposes of today's hearing. Having said that, this is your petition. I'm happy to hear your evidence.
Sure, but it's quite a bit of documents, so I'd just like to know which ones.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
There are quite a number of documents, so I'd just like to know which ones are not relevant.
So as an example, you have a binder there that I've
Right.
provided.
Thank you.
There's Bate stamps in the bottom.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I move the mic a little bit closer?
Sure.
A little better, sorry about that. Let me know if that's better.
Okay, so I'm on Exhibit 7. What page number?
Yeah, so in the bottom it should say AGO 120.
Okay.
If you go there, this purports to be an application for accommodation in which you explain that you have carpal tunnel syndrome.
Right.
I assume that in some way relates to your claim for workers' compensation, none of which is relevant for today's purposes. So,
Well, actually, it is to me because that is the root of the problem.
okay. And
You're
as-
saying that I lied about not having carpal tunnel, and there is enough evidence back from 2008, which the board was aware of, that states that they gave me special accommodations due to my disability with carpal tunnel, which I still have. I had to hire someone to drive me here in order to be present, because I can't drive long distance.
Okay, so Dr. Bombardini, I think what the point we're trying to make is just to keep in mind what the board is most interested in hearing is about your rehabilitation, which naturally concerns events that occurred after your prior discipline. Okay, so do you have any objection to those exhibits 1 through 7?
I do.
What's your objection?
My objection is right here. May
So,
I pass a copy of this?
If you would make sure you speak into the microphone when you're talking.
I brought a piece of evidence here that relates to the accommodations that I had when I took the EPPP test, and I was given special accommodations by the board. So this is to the core of the issues.
Okay, so before we address your documents, let's talk about exhibits 1 through 7 first. Do you have any objection to those?
No, sir.
Okay, so 1 through 7 are admitted for all purposes. Okay, so if you'd like to pass out your documents, and so you want to make sure you give a copy to each member and myself, and Mr. Fleming.
So, Your Honor, as I'm reviewing this, it appears to be the same document I was just referencing, at 120, that's already in the exhibits I submitted.
Thank you.
I'm going before the assembly line here, so we'll shortly have these documents over to you.
Oh, the packets? Okay, it's a two-page.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
One extra.
Hey, Dr. Bombardini, have you provided all the documents you wanted to? It's those
Yes,
two
sir.
documents.
There should be 3 different documents. One is a letter from Gina Bayless, dated 2008, a clerk's declaration, March 3rd, 2008, and an application for accommodations dated also 2/7/2008.
All right. So let's go ahead and mark the last one you mentioned. It's the February 7th, 2008 email, looks like, as Exhibit 8. And then we'll mark Exhibit 9 will be the March 3rd, 2008 clerk's declaration. And Exhibit 10 is the January 18th, 2008 correspondence. All right, Mr. Fleming, any objection to Exhibits 8, 9, and/or 10?
I haven't received 9 or 10. I have 8 here. Same objection. This is AGO 120 that I already referenced.
Which one?
And there's one more, right?
You have this one?
I have that one.
There's one copy missing. This is my original, so I will.
Okay, so actually, let's go ahead and go off the record for this. Sorry.
So you don't have the clerk's declaration?
Yeah, but I think this is all.
I think you might, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and go back on the record. Mr. Fleming, any objections to 8, 9, and/or 10?
Yeah, no additional objection, just the one I made previously.
Okay, so the objection's overruled, and 8 through 10 will be admitted for all purposes. All right, and so, Dr. Bombardini, Mr. Fleming has submitted a request for a protective order to seal Exhibits 5, 6, and 7. Do you have any objection to those documents being sealed?
No, sir.
All right, so without objection, the order is granted and Exhibits 5, 6, and 7 are sealed. All right, thank you, Mr. Fleming, for that. And whenever you're ready, if you'd like to provide your summary.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Bombardini's license was issued in 2011, and 2019 an accusation was filed against her. Relevant cause for discipline in that accusation was that she had been convicted of a misdemeanor under the insurance code for making a false or fraudulent material statement for purposes of obtaining workers' compensation. She was convicted of that offense by way of a no contest plea, and the facts and circumstances are that she made this fraudulent claim in connection with her employment as a psychologist with Kaiser. She went to a contested hearing on the accusation, and at the conclusion of that hearing, this board found that she had, in fact, been convicted of a crime involving fiscal dishonesty, and one that was substantially related to the practices and qualifications of being a psychologist. She was given a 5-year term probation with numerous conditions and requirements, those being practice monitor, completion of the California Psychology Law and Ethics examination, coursework, ethics course, and importantly, a tolling provision that stated that her period of probation would be tolled for any time she spent not in the practice of psychology or residing outside of the state of California. It's her burden to show by clear and convincing evidence that her probation should be terminated early. I think the board is familiar with the factors that it considers in making that determination. I believe that upon conclusion of her presentation of evidence, the board will be compelled to deny the petition.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. All right, Dr. Bombardini, now's your opportunity to provide your testimony. So if I could go ahead and swear you in, if I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you may put your hand down. If I could have you start by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Morella Bombardini, Morella, B like Bravo, O-M, B-boy, A-R-D-I-N-I.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bombardini. So whenever you're ready, you may begin your testimony. Two things I'd ask you to keep in mind is, one, to make sure you're using the microphone, which you have been doing, and that's much appreciated. Also, I understand you may be a little nervous. That's completely understandable. We often talk faster when we're nervous. If you would try to keep that in mind and try to keep the pace of your testimony on the slower side, we certainly would appreciate it, as would the court reporter. So with that, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to express myself during this difficult and critical time of my life. I am keenly aware of the bad decisions that I made, and I regret it immensely. But I'm not here to excuse myself, and I do take 100% full responsibility for my actions. I never had the intention to deceive or lie to the board or anyone in any way, shape, or form. It has been said, remember your past or you are doomed to repeat it. I have not forgotten the frightful events that took place back in 1984, as 40 years ago, which is one of the roots of the issues. That's why I'm on probation. Continues to follow me now, February 29, 2024. So I would like to briefly discuss the extenuating circumstances that need to be considered and are important to fully understand my situation. I was a victim of domestic violence during that period of time. I was going through a very acrimonious divorce from my American husband, who really looked great on the outside, but he was physically abusive, and he was also an alcoholic, and he nearly killed me. I do not have records of the same, but I was at the emergency room several times in San Francisco, where I was taking bleeding. In addition, in 1984, my sister, who just recently passed away, during this time, Ronald Reagan created the act called Mental Health System Act, which initiated all the homeless situations that we're seeing right now. So my sister was obviously affected by that because she was diagnosed with schizophrenia back in Venezuela when she was a child, and she needed to be institutionalized and in need of 24/7 psychiatric care. So I was on a crossroad. I was in a fight or flight situation, and I decided to flight. I'm very remorseful for the harm that I caused my family, but I was not a psychologist during this period of time in 1984, and these two incidents are not related with patient care. So contrary to the records, I was not working as a psychologist after I finished working for Kaiser Permanente, when I applied for workers' compensation. My state of mind during this period of time was incongruent with my belief and how I normally act during adversities and challenging situations. And I will quote my therapist, which I have been, and that has been part of my rehabilitation, Dr. Sternberg. And he completed the therapy information sheet, which states, having read a copy of the decision, it appears that Dr. Bombardini has fulfilled the requirements in that decision. It is also well known how intense pain can affect one's emotions and in itself can be very traumatizing. That Dr. Bombardini applies for worker compensation while in the state of being is far from criminal behavior or fraudulent. To imagine that Dr. Bombardini would be defrauding any insurance that covers patients' therapy, for example, based on her own past behavior is not a reasonable assumption or conclusion. Dr. B is also taking every measure possible to resolve pain and the stressors that have complicated her previous life. However, this doesn't take away the gravity of my behavior. In retrospect, I would have done everything differently. I was very young at the time, and I obviously made bad decisions. And I have paid a hefty price, and the price is not being able to help others as a psychologist and use the skills that took me years to complete, as I had to start from scratch, learning English as a second language. I do have a good track record, it should be noted, of being reliable, responsible, and consistently demonstrated appropriate conduct. And this is evidenced by the letters of reference from previous employers and psychologists, which you should have. So we are aware that there is a mental health crisis worldwide, and I really feel helpless, unable to gain employment due to the poor decisions that I made in 1984. So no one wants to hire me. As soon as I disclose that my license is on probation, they just tell me, sorry, call us back or let us know when the probation period is ended or when your license is back to normal. And after reading my records from the board's website, I do not hear from them, so they asked me to just get off probation, please, as soon as possible. We need you. We need Spanish psychologists to work in our facilities. It should also be noted that only 5.5% of psychologists are Hispanic or another race, and they're able to provide services in Spanish, making that a commodity. So I am not a criminal, but I really feel like I'm being treated as one. As noted by the attorney who helped me, Attorney Leatherberry, I was prosecuted and punished following an unfair hearing for claims that were barred by the statutes of limitations and waived by the board more than 12 years ago. Furthermore, he stated that the board cannot argue that Dr. Bombardini intentionally concealed a prior conviction which they admittedly knew about, and those are the pieces of evidence. I remember talking to the board. My late husband was a lawyer, and he was guiding me during this time when I was doing the application. I did disclose everything, and that's proof right here. I don't know what happened to this piece of paper by Gina Bayless, an enforcement coordinator, where she says, give me certified copies, and then the application for the accommodations, and then I provided a clerk's declaration that this incident back in 1984 was destroyed because of the age. And so they told me to just go ahead and apply, and because it was gone, I had nothing to prove. The records were destroyed. So this has been my dream since childhood, and I did promise my sister that I will become a psychologist when I was a kid. So I will become a doctor to help you and bring you to the United States, which I did once I left Venezuela. And I did accomplish that dream, which is my passion, and it has been taken away from me. So I really don't wish to rehash the events that led to this conviction, which was reduced to a misdemeanor. And you have a copy of that I disclosed to the board, and the board was aware of this event and asked me to petition the court of proof that the records were destroyed. And this that letter, March 3rd, 2008, and correspondence again between Gina Bayless, board enforcement coordinator, during this period of time. I have no history of a repeated offense, nor do I have a pattern of criminal behavior. As my psychologist stated in the therapy information sheet, that it's well known how intense pain can affect one's emotion, and in itself can be very traumatizing. That Dr. Bombardini applies for workers' compensation while in the state of being is far from criminal behavior or fraudulent. To imagine that she would be defrauding an insurance company that covers patients' therapy, for example, based on her own past behavior, is not a reasonable assumption. This is my therapist talking. And in conclusion, Dr. B is also taking every measure possible to resolve the pain and the stressors that led to that. So I am begging you for forgiveness. My rehabilitation have consisted of therapy, looking back at the decisions that I made, making sure that I would never repeat any situation like that. I have never done that ever again. I applied for workers' compensation because a lot of people at Kaiser Permanente quit, and I did that as well. I quit Kaiser because I was in severe pain. And I heard that they had a really good physical therapy for your hands, which doctor have wanted me to do surgery, but after doing some research, it shows that therapy really doesn't work. I mean, surgery doesn't work, that therapy did. So I did apply for that, and I totally regret it, but it has never been my intention to defraud anyone. Imagine coming here from the United States, not speaking any English, flying from Venezuela to Florida, hitchhiking, getting raped, and then going through the trauma of having a husband who almost killed you. And I'm very fortunate to be alive, and I'm a strong person. I have 3 sons that I love very much. I'm about to become a grandmother, and I really want to get back to work. I really need to get back to work. I have 7 dogs. In the meanwhile, the dogs have rehabilitated me in so many ways because I have rescued them from the streets of India. And there is a website that I have that shows this. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Right, Doctor, did you finish your testimony?
Yes, for now, sir.
Okay, Mr. Fleming, cross-examination.
Thank you. Dr. Bombardini, you're talking about 2 separate incidents where you've been involved in the criminal court. That's correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one was back in the 1980s.
84.
84. You understand that your discipline in this case has nothing to do with that conviction whatsoever?
According to my attorneys, it does.
Okay.
According to the brief, there is many briefs that are accusing me, starting from 1984. It was a sort of a slippery slope, and then it came to the 2018 incident of workers' compensation.
Yeah, so this board's final decision on your license in this case dismissed any accusation related to the 1984 conviction and relied solely on your 2019 conviction. Do you understand that?
No, I did not. This is
Okay.
all news to me.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know. Appreciate it.
Your 2019 conviction was in connection with your employment at Kaiser Permanente, correct?
Well, not really. Well, I did work for Kaiser Permanente, yes, but I was not working when I applied for workers' compensation.
Did you sue them for workers' compensation?
I applied for workers' compensation in order to get physical therapy because of the damage that was done to my hands. It was very intense. It was a lot of typing, I required special accommodation, which was
I
provided to me.
ask, Doctor, because you submitted a document, and it's at AGO 224, which is a deposition from the lawsuit Morella Bombardini versus the Permanente Medical Group. Do you recall submitting that document?
Actually, I do not. Can you please show me where it is?
Yeah, if you look in your binder,
Which exhibit number?
it's going to be exhibit number 7.
Okay.
And if you look in the bottom right corner, there's some small letters and numbers, and it's AGO 224.
Okay.
So, do you recall submitting this exhibit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is the basis of your conviction for insurance fraud, is that correct?
The way it was explained by my attorney is that during the deposition that I sent you a copy of, they said that I lied about not having carpal tunnel. And that's what I'm here to demonstrate as well, that I did have carpal tunnel, that during this deposition, there were many times that I said I did not recall, which I did not.
Do you understand you were convicted of that offense?
Yes, sir.
And that your time to argue about whether or not you were guilty was in that court at that time and not here today?
Well, I'm bringing that up again because during that time, I didn't think that this was going to come to this, to having my license on probation. That was very unfortunate because I knew that I had carpal tunnel, I knew that it was recorder, and I knew that I had evidence, so I wasn't even concerned that I was going to get in trouble. Why would I get in trouble if I'm telling the truth?
I just want to make sure you understand that there's nothing this board can do to undo the conviction that you suffered for insurance fraud in criminal court. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. And that case was dismissed as well. According to the attorneys, I didn't really have good attorneys, unfortunately. I had a...
Yeah, so I think maybe there's a language barrier issue because there's a difference between dismissed and expunged.
That's true, yes.
Okay. Did you plead no contest to that conviction?
They told me to, which unfortunately I did, and I didn't really understood exactly what that meant.
Let me talk to you about what's happened since then.
Okay.
Once you were placed on probation, did you move out of the state of California?
Yes, I was planning on it because my sister was on dialysis, and I had taken her to every hospital there is, and nobody wanted to give her a kidney transplant. That's why.
So you moved from California to Maryland to get your sister a kidney transplant?
To try to, yes.
Okay. Did you apply to become a psychologist in the state of Maryland?
I did. And I also have copies of the letters that I told them. I sent them a copy of the brief that I was on probation here. And it was such a slippery slope. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's get her back into trouble again. And then I was denied. And I got in trouble there as well, and in Oregon. So it's been a very difficult situation that I haven't been able to work for being on probation.
Did I understand correctly? After you moved to Maryland and your license was denied there, you moved to Oregon?
Yes, sir, because I have one of my sons lives in Oregon.
Okay. And did you apply for licensure in the state of Oregon as well?
Yes.
Okay. And that was also denied?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You moved back to California in approximately September of last year, is
Yes,
that right?
sir.
Since you moved back, have you found a psychologist who may be willing to act as a practice monitor for you?
I've been looking.
Okay.
There hasn't been anyone who is willing. And as my probation officer stated, if I have this correctly, I cannot do any of the requirements until I'm fully employed. So if nobody wants to employ me, then how can I complete the probationary period?
Have you completed your ethics exam?
No, sir.
Have you done coursework since being
Yes, sir.
placed on probation? Since being placed on probation?
Yes,
Have you submitted certificates of that coursework
yes,
to your probation monitor?
yes, sir.
And you included those in your,
I don't, it's in my, I had to send them to the board, all the courses that I've taken as a CEU.
okay.
So that's where
So
they are.
I did see some of that, and it looked like it was all prior to 2019. Were there courses
No.
that you took after 2019?
Oh, absolutely.
You have, and you will submit those to the board?
I have submitted them to the board, yeah. You have
Okay.
to, because they're required.
Okay.
Regardless of whether or not I'm on probation.
Um, That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, Dr. Bombardini, is there anything else you'd like to testify to on your behalf?
I have a closing statement, if I may.
We're not yet ready for closing, because if you don't have any further testimony, then I'll ask if the board has any questions.
Yes, sir.
Was there any other testimony you wanted to provide?
No, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions by any members of the board? All right, seeing none, we can take closing arguments. Mr. Fleming?
So Dr. Bombardini has the burden of proof, to show by clear and convincing evidence that she's entitled to early termination of probation. I don't think she can meet that burden. This board specifically found that she committed a crime of fiscal dishonesty, specifically found that it was related to the qualifications of being a psychologist, set out a term of probation with specific conditions that she needed to comply with if she wanted to come back to regular practice. She has not done that. She moved out of state, tried to pursue a profession in other states. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's not progress towards rehabilitation. It's not progress towards practicing here in the state of California. She's done herself, I think, a bit of a disservice by doing so because probation has extended. She has a full 5 years to complete. She hasn't completed a single day of probation pursuant to this board's decision that was made following her conviction in 2019. The evidence of rehabilitation is not there. She seems somewhat fixated on prior convictions and the fairness of them. It's obviously not for this board to adjudicate. That has been adjudicated. She's been found guilty, and it's her obligation at this point to live with those consequences. Early termination should be for those folks who go above and beyond in their probation participation and don't merely comply with the conditions set forth, but actually take a proactive approach and try to do something more. I would argue that in this case, Dr. Bombardini has fallen considerably short of that. I think there's a very solid legal argument one can make that she's not even eligible for early termination at this point because she hasn't completed any probation. The statute says in literal terms that once 2 years have passed since the date of the decision, one can apply for early termination. But under longstanding rules of statutory construction, you have to construe that language in the broader context of the body of law. I won't go on ad nauseum about this, but just briefly, the broader context is rehabilitation because the purpose of probation is rehabilitation. So when someone has not taken a single step towards that rehabilitation, I think it leads to what we would call, legally speaking, an absurd result. And there's a second canon of statutory interpretation that says there's an obligation to avoid just these kinds of absurd results when you interpret state law. So I think there's solid legal footing to say she's not eligible for early termination. I certainly think she's not deserving of it at this point. And with that, I'd submit it to the board.
All right, Dr. Bombardini, your closing argument?
Yes, sir, thank you. I agree that I should have stayed here instead of moving, but I decided to put my family first, and I hope that you understand that. I was the caregiver for my husband who died of cancer, and then my mother. I was also caregiving for her, and then my sister who just recently passed away. So that has been the crime that I committed by moving away. I wasn't escaping. I wasn't trying to get rid of California or being on probation or any of that. I'm asking the board for forgiveness. I'm taking here a step of faith. I understand that. And I was trying to hire an attorney to come and help me, and they told me that I was wasting my time. But I would never give up. I would never give up. I'm not a criminal. I never did have any intention. I'm on therapy. I'm having really cathartic experiences in going back and seeing what happened and just processing everything. It has been a realistic experience. I have come a long way since I came to America, and I knew that I had to leave my country to help my sister with the diagnosis of early childhood schizophrenia. I have done a lot of self-reflection, and I know that I make horrible decisions. There's a Chinese proverb that says, falling into a ditch makes you wiser. But our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. The Bible also mentions, as far as the east is from the west, that is how far God will forgive us and remove our sins. I am a Christian. I have a good relationship with God, and that is my primary goal, to have a good and clean relationship with God. John 8:7 states, let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. So imagine you wake up one day and you say, no, you cannot work, you cannot go to court, forget it. You did something that you didn't have an intention of doing, but we're going to punish you anyway. And I'm very remorseful, and I have really paid my price with having taken my dream from childhood of becoming a psychologist. It has been the punishment of a lifetime, not being able to work as a psychologist and help people that I love to help. So it really does feel like I'm in prison, and I am in a financial dire need to get back to work. So this is a lesson that I really will never forget, and I promise that I am so careful now on how to complete questionnaires and answer questions accordingly. I really regret those decisions that I made, and I'm pleading the board for forgiveness to give me a second chance. And I promise the board I will never be in any situation that jeopardizes my morals and honesty. I was raised as a Christian. I still maintain and attend 3 weekly congregations meetings, in addition to doing field service work and taking care of 7 dogs, and my son as well. In addition to founding the nonprofit organization, Downward Facing That Dog, which allows me to rescue dogs from being euthanized, taking them off the streets and shelters. So I'd like to end with one of my favorite quotes. We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. Martin Luther King. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fleming. Thank you, Dr. Bombardini, for your appearances this morning. That concludes the hearing, so the record's closed, the matter's submitted, and we are off the record.
Thank you, Judge. The board will now meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126C3 to discuss disciplinary matters, including petitions for reinstatement, modification, or early termination, proposed decisions, stipulations, petitions for reconsideration and remands. And just to let you know, if you're following along the agenda, we're a little early. So if we do finish closed session, we'll open the door and we will hit the licensing committee report before our next petition at 1:30. So hope to see everyone there, and thank you.